Quintessential Show. Quintessentially South African.
All right, it is the Quintessential Show right here on qessential.co.za and live streaming on YouTube. It is great to have you with us today. Really great. And let's talk tax here on the show today. My name is Quintus, and tonight we are joined by Mr. Andre Bothma here on the Quintessential Show. Andre, great to have you. Welcome to the live stream. Andre is a tax consultant with 12 years of experience in the accounting industry. He holds a higher diploma in taxation and a certificate in wealth management. Listen, Andre, my father is also a bald tax consultant. I'm bald, you're bald. My first question is, do taxes make you want to tear your hair out?
Well, it used to want to tear my hair out, especially dealing with SARS when I first started working, and I was on the phone of SARS day in and day out for the first 4 years of my career, and I think that's what caused the boldness to actually speed up. Nowadays I think it's a bit better. I'm used to SARS now, but the hair growth hasn't come back, so I don't know if that counts.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's a stressful job. I can see it on all tax consultants' faces that it's even in 2021 been a tough one. Listen, I believe that teaching people the tools of financial independence in South Africa can assist in nation building. And so I saw your YouTube channel, which is in the description below. You can go and check it out if you are watching us live on YouTube. Now, look, I also follow you on Twitter, and one of the tweets I saw, and this was January 28th, even this year, Jen Thorpe, somebody had tweeted, "What is the one thing that they didn't teach you at school that you needed to know?" And you said how taxes work. And so that's what kind of spurred on this conversation with you tonight. I'm a big proponent of changing or finding the financial gaps in South African education and changing it so that we actually teach people, the right stuff at school. Tell me, how do you think we should be teaching tax at the school level or financial education in general?
I think it's really disappointing. I can remember when I was in high school in 2008, finishing matric, that I didn't feel prepared for the fact that I'm going into the job market for the first time. And what I mean by that is, how do I handle my salary? And when you get your first payslip, right, you look at your payslip and you see, oh, I thought I'm going to earn 6,000 Rand, but then I'm only getting into my bank account like maybe 5.5, maybe it was 5,300. Where did that 700 go? Now I cannot remember that I was taught that I was going to pay tax, or at least pay as you earn, in high school on my salary. Now, in the back of my mind, I knew about tax, but I mean, it's because I grew up in a nice household where finance was taught. But if it's not taught in the house and you don't learn the fact that you're gonna pay tax and there's VAT on literally everything, I actually want to make this saying, tax is everywhere, or or that is tax. Because, but I think one thing I think people can do at least school level is to bring in a basic tax for individuals for the accounting subject. I think if you have accounting and there's maybe a module, it doesn't even need to be long. It can just be in your matric year that you just do a module on the individual tax. And maybe if you have business economics as a subject, maybe you learn about how company tax work and how VAT works for VAT vendors. And if you and I think in math literacy, you do learn about VAT, that there's VAT when you buy stuff. But I think it's very superficial, and I think schools can just go that a little bit more in depth to prepare people better for the fact that they're leaving school. And once they leave university, there's going to be taxes that they need to pay, and at least be aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, the minute you get a job, you get out of university, you get a job, and suddenly you're seeing all these things like, pay as you earn tax, and there's even taxes on that sheet that you eventually go, what the hell's an SDL tax? I have no cooking clue what that is, but all you internalize is I'm losing money here. But I love
exactly.
I love the piece that you wrote called Taxes Everywhere. Tell me, what is the tax that you hate most in South Africa? Come on, give me the lowdown.
The tax I hate most, I had a discussion today with somebody. I think it's capital gains tax, to be honest. And the reason I hate capital gains tax is, if you think about it, the money that you earn, that's taxed. Right. Mm-hmm. And now if you want to build an investment, you want to maybe invest in property, or you want to buy some stocks, you're going to do that with after tax. You're going to do that with after tax money.
Yeah.
And now if that is creating a gain over a few years and you want to sell it, then you're going to pay again tax. So capital gains tax is in a way a double taxation. A minor way, it's luckily for individuals, the marginal tax rate when you pay capital gains tax is 18% maximum that you could pay on anything that you sell, any capital gain. But that I think is the worst. And I think what's worse, that, one university, I think it was Wits University, they threatened that they want to bring in wealth tax, which is where you are taxed at a percentage of your total asset base, or your total your total net worth. And that I think is going to be extremely problematic if they even consider bringing in a type of wealth tax.
No, yeah, I mean, that's one of those things. A lot of these, things that people put out into the world make for good articles, but a lot of the time it needs to be explained at multiple levels. I mean, I was just on I think Breitenbach's yesterday. I had a webinar where they were talking about this tax of my dad's listening to an expat tax thing tonight. And the Breitenbach seminar last night was about when you try and get your money out of South Africa after retirement, that it sits there it sits in this account for like 3 years before you can touch it, type of thing. So it's tough. It's I see a lot of people talking about taxes and where your money is going to sit, but I don't hear a lot of basics being discussed. But I like the fact that you brought up capital gains. We'll get to that in a second. But the way, like I said, I found Andre I found him on YouTube, and it was around tax filing season last year, and I've been following him ever since. But Andre runs a YouTube. Like I said, it's here in the description, and he teaches you with tutorials how to do e-filing, which is doing your taxes. Now, I'm lucky that I have a father who's an accountant who helps me with those kind of things, but I know that there are a lot of citizens that need to learn how to do it themselves, because once you go past a certain threshold, you become a taxpayer. What is that threshold, by the way, Andre?
For the 2020 tax year, that was last year, the tax, if you just filed, that was 79,000. So the first 79,000 for an individual is not taxed. And then for the 2021 tax year, that is finishing just now in February, is about 83,000.
Yeah. So if you're making a little bit of bank in South Africa, you're going to have to do your e-filing. The e-filing system, and this is what I think has given you the urge to tear your hair out, and it's been in the news. Tell us about the modernization of e-filing, because I saw specifically this year that it all came to a pinnacle, and it's caused a lot of frustration. Give us a little bit of a history lesson in e-filing and what SARS should be doing in the future to remedy this e-filing disaster. Yeah.
So a bit of background. I started working 2009. And in that year, e-filing was up and running. It was going well, and everything was on Adobe Flash Player. Adobe Flash Player is the back end of SARS e-filing, the SARS e-filing website. And Praveen Gordon in 2007 already mentioned the word modernization. So the initial idea of modernizing SARS, the SARS e-filing website and the SARS backend on their side as well, was to actually go over to HTML5, because already in 2012, only about 20% of all websites still use Adobe Flash Player. And SARS e-filing being one of them still in 2012. So the conversation started in 2007. Then time went on and nothing happened in terms of a modernization process, at least from an e-filing standpoint. And until 2014, then Tomoyane got appointed as the SARS commissioner. And then a year later, Tomoyane, for who knows what reason, decided, I'm going to halt this whole process because this might cost SARS a lot of money, and I don't know why he did it, but he just said, okay, completely, we're going to halt it. Now, this is 2015. Okay, only 20. Now you remember, only 20% of all websites used Flash Player by 2012 already. Anyway. Fast forward to 2017, only 2 years later, and Adobe Flash Player tells the world and tells the internet, in 3 years' time, Flash Player is gonna have no more support, and it's going to and they're basically closing the door on Flash Player. Thank you very much. You know those Flash games that you used to play. You can't do that anymore.
Those are so fun.
And then. Yeah. And then Microsoft eventually chimed in and said, okay, the Microsoft story is a bit later. So then fast forward a year and a half later, SARS have done nothing since that announcement. A year and a half later, we've got the interview with the IT head of SARS that went viral on YouTube. There was a meme video also made about that viral video.
Please protect me from
essentially, please protect me from yourself. She couldn't explain what's happening with the whole SARS e-filing. Why would it cost R1 billion to fix it? Because at that point, October 2018, none of the forms have been converted from Flash Player. So think 11 years, none of the forms have been moved from Flash Player to HTML5. And then that is when the actual conversion started. So SARS then converted a couple of forms, specifically the individual tax return, the company tax return, and the trust tax return. They were converted. So by, I think, the 2019 tax return, you could file those in HTML5. Then in 2020, pay-as-you-earn was converted and VAT was converted. But then by December 2020, when the nail was in the coffin on Adobe Flash Player, Microsoft then released an article and said they are going to remove Flash Player in the next Windows update. So if you run a Windows PC and you want to use Flash Player for any other forms other than those first 4 forms that I mentioned, you wouldn't be able to. And so SARS had to scramble and had to make a scramble move in 2 weeks' time to come up with a solution. And there was browser this and do this with Edge and do this with Google Chrome. And there was even backdating. I had a temporary fix for about a week where you would backdate your system date.
Right.
And then I was able to still use e-filing normally. And now where we are at today, SARS actually released a SARS browser, which you can do your e-filing on. It works on the software, the backend of the software works with Flash Player, but only because of the coding. And the coding is like a bit, it's like on the older side.
Yeah, this
So that's
fills
why.
me. Well, this whole thing fills me with existential dread because I mean, like I said, I was on the phone with my dad, and he's like, "Listen, I backdated my PC and did the thing." So I was like, "Okay, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. That we now have to now set our clocks back." But then he talks about this SARS browser, and I say, "Listen, that's all good and well, but I mean, this whole modernization process from the get go." There were coders who were like, I would help SARS out for peanuts and help them to modernize. But, how do we even apply to the governments to do it? Secondly, a browser, to me, installing a browser that you've never heard of, you don't know who's coded it, there's almost no checks and balances. I mean, isn't this a little bit of a security threat at the end of the day?
Unfortunately, I'm not an IT expert, but I mean there was a bit of a thread on Twitter where two IT guys were talking about the security and the potential threat that the browser has. For a temporary solution, it works. That's all I can say. Unfortunately, when you actually have to download the browser, you have to fill in your personal details, your name, your surname, your ID number, your telephone number. So that's another way of information gathering. They already have all the information. Why are they forcing you to fill out the form in order to download it? I even tried to wangle the system and not complete any details and just click I accept and then click the download button, but it didn't allow me to download. So they did a number on me there.
Yeah.
The browser works. I'm using it. But one thing I can say is they are speedily trying to convert the rest of the forms that's still on Flash Player, because I'll tell you that that browser does not work on Apple devices. It's a .msi file, which means that only Microsoft it's a Microsoft installer application. And so only Microsoft PCs can install the browser. That's number one. And number two, you want to be able to use Google. You want to be able to use whatever browser you are comfortable with to do your e-filing from. Is that too much to ask?
I don't think it is. It's almost as if the state doesn't want money anymore. It's like, how are you guys going to figure out where this money is coming from if your system is not modernized? But now I believe they've extended the deadline, correct?
They moved the deadline, the tax return deadline, 2020 tax return deadline, to the 15th of February. So this is the first time in my working history that SARS have ever moved the individual filing deadline.
Yeah, but it's easy to blame it on something like COVID, right? I mean, did they blame it on anything like that, or did they say it's because of these things like the browser?
You can use COVID as a scapegoat for nearly any excuse that you want to come up with.
Yeah.
So I read the article and I was like, no, this was a combination. This was mainly because of your mess up with Adobe Flash Player, and secondly, possibly because of COVID. COVID wasn't around for all the other years that you had time to fix your e-filing issues. So, COVID, yeah.
Yeah, well, look, when the systems are working, Andre Bothma, who we are live with, he helps you guys get your filing done on YouTube. He shows you where to go, and he keeps you in the loop, which is good now. So he's got a whole e-filing video now for this post Flash Player era that we now live in, and it's a bit of a, it's just I will always chalk it down to government, incompetence. But look, we're gonna have to figure it out at some point. But Andre, you're also writing blogs, I see now. So I saw a piece on Banker X, or two pieces you've written for them. Talk to us about getting involved with Banker X. Did they come to you? Did you go to them? Did you say, listen, I want to get a piece of content out? Talk to us about that little link up.
So, I mean, I've been fairly active on Twitter for the past, I'd say 3 years. And I've been following Kaushik Karan, who's also one of my favorite Twitter people. And I sent him an email, or I think I sent Banker X an email where I said, look, I would love to write for you guys. I love their website, the fact that they've got financial articles that is dissected for the average person on the street, that doesn't know necessarily much about finance, but can learn a lot from there and wouldn't go to a site like MoneyWeb or Fin24 or your financial news websites, and it's entertaining. And so when you read a piece, you can read something like about the Kardashians, but there's a financial thing in there. Or I like to throw in football analogies in my tax stuff. It makes the content digestible. And so Kaushik was like, listen, man, I love what you do on Twitter. I love the fact that you're doing the YouTube stuff. It would be great to have you on there. And it's been amazing to write for them. And my last article did already 3 times better than the first one I did. And I think the first one was actually my better article of the two. And so I'm going to write for them once a month, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the plan. So hopefully,
I totally agree with you, man. Fin24 and MoneyWeb and those are for what I consider to be a little bit advanced traders. Like you can digest that information and kind of figure out what it means. But sincerely, for people who are in the age range of in their 20s to 30s. I think the whole game has changed in that sense, because now there's so many other things that these websites don't talk to you about, like crypto and all that kind of new aged investment that not even the biggest TV channels like Bloomberg and CNBC can explain. And we just saw that the last week with this GameStop debacle. But listen, we'll get to that in a second. Well, go ahead.
Have you heard of Dogecoin?
This is one of my questions that I didn't pre-send you. I kind of sent a few to Andre saying, listen, I'm going to talk about this and that. But actually what I want to talk about the whole show is this tweet. I saw you tweeting about Dogecoin. And then I saw Elon Musk tweeting about Dogecoin. And then I installed a new app that somebody on one of these crazy Facebook South African investment groups told me to download. Valor. I don't know if you've heard about it. VALR.
Mm-mm.
So you can buy Dogecoin with it. It's a South African company.
Okay.
I want to invite. I also
cool.
want to invite them on. But I just invested in Dogecoin yesterday, and it went from 200 to 400 in a day. It's like a rand value. So I'm chuffed. Talk to us about Dogecoin.
I jumped on. I was watching the GameStop debacle, and I've got this very weird view. I like to watch things before I act. I'm very careful of things I go into, and I was watching this GameStop thing. I was okay. This is great news, but what's next? What's the next thing? And then I think I saw a tweet from Elon where it just said Doge. And I was like, I looked it up, and I spent a whole day of my working day. I was supposed to work. I didn't get much done that day, but I spent the whole day on Reddit reading about Dogecoin. Where does the coin come from? The meme coin. I'm because of Reddit, I love the community. I myself am often on Reddit. I like reading the stuff there, and I love memes as well. And I just thought, if there's one cryptocurrency I'm going to invest in, it's going to be a meme currency, and that meme currency it's going to be Dogecoin. And I invested some money early in the morning when it was still climbing quite a lot. I think last week, Friday, and I'm just sitting there. Because the thing is, if this thing, it's only been a week, right? Yeah. It's been a couple of days. If Elon carries on and there's more media and it's in the news, and this new coin has entered the top 5 of all the cryptocurrencies, I don't know, is this Bitcoin 2.0? We don't know.
Andre, listen, man, we started this conversation and we started it with the basics of tax. And now you're going into, I'm following exuberant investment ideology here. My problem is, and this is something I spoke to a friend with yesterday, is that there's so much exuberance happening right now because everybody's at home and trying to find something that'll make their money grow. Now, I mean, there's even a Facebook group now of Easy Equities South African investors that they started this group. There's like 60,
Wonderful.
I know,
Amazing.
but I mean, there's like 60,000 people on it, and sometimes some guy will just fly in and he'll say, buy this thing and buy it now. And I wonder, how many of these people are that desperate to actually now put their money in those kind of things? So I think, and I'm sure you can get on board with this. Invest in things that you understand, because my word, there's a lot of things that people don't understand that they're throwing money at the moment, and we've seen that.
Yeah, I think it's dangerous, because the one thing that the FICE Act is there to regulate the actual people who's giving the financial advice, who's registered. But the FICE Act has no control over what people say on social media, and so there's very little regulation of I can go on and hashtag Doge, and people, if I've got enough following, you saw what happened with Elon, that thing climbed like 800%, or I think it was 500%. That between that, I think it was Thursday morning in American hours. I think climbed 500%, and yes, 100%. People should buy. You should invest in something that you understand. There's actually a book on the basics of cryptocurrency. Now, I read this textbook. This will be short. I read this textbook called On Food and Cooking. Now, the thing that textbook is about 900 pages long, and I was lying in the bed reading the book in my. It's a textbook that you read in university. Why the hell am I reading a cookbook textbook when I'm supposed to sleep? And so it teaches you about eggs and this and that and everything.
Yeah.
But the same type of book is there for crypto. So I decided, let me read this book about crypto, so that I just understand what it is. And I felt like, look, I want to buy into this Bitcoin, but it's way too expensive now for me to get in. And so that's why when I saw Dogecoin, hey, this is a cheap coin, and this is still the early stages of the coin. It's been around for a while, not as long as Bitcoin, but let me be an early adopter. And so that's why I made the plunge. But I only made the plunge because I understand cryptocurrencies a little bit. I've got some understanding, very basic understanding.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to have a argument with somebody in the cryptocurrency world, but I will be able to have an argument with somebody who's not in it.
Yeah, for sure. To kind of say like this, don't write it off. This might be something in the future.
Exactly.
Which is kind of. I mean, I've seen the content around that for many years. Of let's take this seriously. And look, I still think Bitcoin and these kind of cryptocurrencies probably do. They are changing the way people bank, and it's making the banks change the way they do things as well. So, look, I mean, I'm keeping a keen eye on it. But at the end of the day, we live in South Africa, and I think that your retail investor in South Africa, sometimes your beginner investor starts to first look at what can I purchase and from which company can I purchase it from, and that's why I think a lot of investors are going the easy equities route. And so as a wealth manager yourself, tell us, let's talk about saving. Now, obviously, the best way to invest your money is to find an investment vehicle that gives you a tax break. And as a tax man, you would be very much keen on that. So what are the most tax efficient investment vehicles you can access in South Africa? Give us the breakdown there.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that immediately jumps to mind is the tax-free savings account. Of everything SARS have tried in the past and encouraged people to save, that's possibly one of the best moves that they ever made, was to say, let's create a way for people to invest their money. It grows, free of capital gains. Any income that you earn from it has no taxes. There's some complication with foreign dividends if you happen to have some foreign holding inside a tax-free savings account. But for everything else, there's no tax consequences when the income or the growth, when you decide to sell the tax-free savings account. There are some limitations. So like the annual limitation, you can only put in 36,000 Rand a year and per tax year, and obviously the lifetime limitation of 500,000. So the common advice is when you put money into the tax-free savings, don't take money out of it because you can't replace the money. So that's one vehicle that I like quite a lot. I use one for my son's education. Unfortunately, yes, there's some contrary advice that it should not be an education fund, but it's a small amount that I'm putting away, so drop in the bucket. The other one I do think is attractive is your retirement annuity, or if you can, a pension or a provident fund through your company. Obviously, you get the full the 27.5% deduction per tax year based on how much you actually contribute, up to a maximum of 350,000 per tax year. The downside of that is eventually, so first thing is you don't have access to the money unless you want to pay penalties and taxes when you draw the money early. You can only access the money at the age of retirement, and so then you only have an availability of 1/3 as a lump sum. And there's quite a nice tax break. The first 500,000 of that is tax-free, and then 2/3 beyond that you take out is paid out in annuities. Luckily, at that time, you might not need that much income, so you would be on a lower tax rate. So I think another benefit of an RA is that it's pre-tax investing. So this is the bike.
Hey man, it's going wild out there.
Yeah, I live right next to Sienna Drive, and there's always bikes up and down here. Yes. So the difference between an RA and a tax-free savings, so an RA is pre-tax, so the money is deducted before you pay the tax, and so in that way, SARS actually pays a portion of your retirement annuity, in a technical sense. So that's I think the one thing about RAs to be careful of is to specifically choose your investment house carefully, because the fees are quite high. The fees can be very high. So I would ask for a fee structure first. Maybe a company like 10X, or I think Signia has fairly cheap RAs. So shop around for a cheap RA. Fees are very important. And I think the last one I want to mention is, there's two more, is the Section 12J investment. Now, this is a bit technical, but basically how it works is Section 12J investments is you can invest your money in there. You get 100% of that investment as a tax deduction. But there is a big caveat to Section 12J investments, in that if you sell that investment within the first 5 years that you have it, you must add that money back as a recoupment, and then you pay tax on it. So if that investment does bad and you want out, you're going to pay tax. So what a lot of those 12J investments do is they kind of force you to stay in for 5 years, regardless of how well or how good or how bad the investment does. So I'm very careful of actually advising people to go the 12J investment route, unless they themselves have gotten enough financial advice to do so.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but some people, you could donate to a startup or something like that. Would that give you that coverage?
As far as I know, no, there's very specific rules for 12J investments. It has to have the wording 12J investment, and there's specific rules of setting a 12J investment company up and all that. So it's a very specific way of getting into that. The last one, I think, and this is South Africans are absolutely in love with this, and this is rental properties. I'm busy with a rental property series on YouTube. And the reason why it's so great as an investment vehicle is that the buy-in getting a rental property is if you can afford a second bond, or even if you can afford a bond while you're renting, that's all what you need. And so it's a much easier access to capital than a bank wouldn't lend me millions to a bank. Listen, I want to invest this in the stock market. They're going to say I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But if I go to the bank and say, I've got X amount of money per month, I want to buy a house. Hey, here's your money, right? So that's the first thing.
So can you do that
and then
through,
you can
through
write
Airbnb, right?
Yeah, if you have rental properties, and I in fact had a client at one point. He set up a very interesting structure that he would buy several properties. Now he was able to. He would renovate and spruce them up for Airbnb, and then he would run them. He would pay. I think and he had a fairly large Airbnb thing going on. I think somebody also they pay rent, but instead of paying, and then they sublet it as an Airbnb. So so there are ways that people that do the Airbnbs. But I think the attractive thing of rental income is that you can basically claim all the interest that you pay on the bond. You keep your bond as high as possible, and that means you don't pay much tax on the rental properties, but your rental income increases. So you can decide when do you want to pay off the rental property and eventually pay the tax. But over that period, you could actually add onto that portfolio more properties, and then that way grow your asset base until you actually feel, okay, now I want to sell property. Now I want to pay off the bonds and then take the tax hit.
Wow. So yeah, so you can do it all at once at a later stage, but during that time you could be. But I mean, doesn't that maybe surprise some people? But down the road, eventually you're sitting there going like, "Oops, now I have to pay all this tax, and I'm not sure that I have the money to do so."
They do. No, they. I think rental income is, I call it a tax trap for a lot of people, because people need to realize that if you don't pay, if your income, if there's no pay as you earn that you've paid on it, and you have other income, whether it's rental income or you've got a side hustle that's doing really well, you are going to pay tax on the profits. And so my rule of thumb is for any income that is not pay, that has not pay as you earn deducted from it, put aside 10 to 20% of that income for taxes. That is one of my best. That's one of my best tax rules I ever came up with.
No, definitely, because I've seen in the tax consulting side of things. I mean, sometimes you have to tell your client, "Listen, you owe X amount of tax," and they hit the roof.
And that is, I think that's one of the things I hate about my job, is having to phone up a client, knowing that they haven't made provision for the tax, or they had bad tax advice maybe in prior years and whatever, and then telling them they have to pay 100K.
Jeez, like,
or they haven't filed their tax returns for 4 years. Now they're catching up. I calculate their tax. They've done really well. Maybe in 1 year you can afford to pay 20,000, but now multiply that times 4, and all of a sudden, there's this guy I like to listen to. He told a story about a dragon. He says, "Deal with your dragons while they're still small." A tax bill of 10,000 is fine in 1 year. But if you multiply that by 5 and you haven't filed for 5 years, and there's penalties also that you have to pay, now all of a sudden you've got a big dragon that's running away with your house with a roof on its back. Now you have to deal with SARS.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to pay them 60K. And now what?
Yeah,
now I must take out
Listen, I did this thing where I was investing in some real estate investment trust, and now for 2 years running, I've had to pay 17 Rand to SARS every year. What's going on here, man? This is ridiculous. Why am I paying 17 Rand? Surely they don't want 17 Rand. But I think that's one of the, you say you hate that part, and I believe that all tax consultants hate that part where they have to tell their client, listen, it's X amount. But the venom that taxpayer eventually feels for the state, I contend, is useful for potentially, building up to the tax revolt. But I'm not, that's not financial advice that I'm giving there. But people really start to get a big dislike for the state and how many taxes that there are. So, I mean, I've seen this rolling around on social media that guys are just, guys who are angry with the state because we pay our tax and we see it. We don't see the fruits of it, should I rather say.
Yeah.
Have you seen on social media guys talking about a tax revolt? How is that even something that can be pulled off? And I know that the finance minister doesn't want us to talk about it. Tell me your thoughts.
I mean, I think there were 2 years ago on Twitter, there was a bit of a buzz. I think even tax revolt was hashtag, and it did land up on trending. Yeah. And so if it lands up on trending in South Africa, then it's definitely a conversation topic. But it hasn't come about again. But the tax revolt, it's a very different. I mean, it's been pulled off. There's a couple of Wikipedia. I might do a YouTube video about different tax revolts that's happened in the past. I think one of them that was very close to actually happening, but it didn't actually bear fruit, was a pay-as-you-earn revolt. Because basically, your people who's paying the salaries, they are basically paying people's tax on SARS's behalf, or even VAT vendors. And then I don't know whether this is legitimate or not. There's the legitimacy, the legality of a tax revolt might come into question. But what's a very interesting topic to me, and I intend to do my dissertation on this, is the morality of tax. Is whether there's a moral argument of a tax revolt. And at that point, when there was whispers about it on Twitter, was to not pay VAT over to SARS, to just to tell the whole private sector to hold off on all VAT payments for 1 month. Mm-hmm. And I think there was even an article about this. And it's difficult. If you ask me now on the spot whether I support such a revolt or not, I wouldn't be able to give you a proper answer. It's something I need to mull over and think about a bit. But definitely in a dissertation, there would be a strong, potentially, I think, a strong argument for a revolt. But a moral argument rather than a legal one.
Yeah, well, but that's the whole thing, constitutionality in this country has been, it's been in the news. It's not a big thing. It's like the Constitution doesn't matter anymore type of thing. I'm being a bit facetious about it, but like you say, I think that's what's actually generating a moral argument. And a lot of the faith-based people will say, pay to Caesar what is due, but at the same time, I'm sure there's many other moral arguments to be made for potentially wrapping this iteration of SARS up. We'll see what happens. I didn't want this to turn into an anti-government tirade, but
let's not turn into anarchists all of a sudden.
No, yeah, I've had them on the show. It's been tough. But you're doing the right work in terms of looking at the situation at which we find ourselves, and then telling people what their rights are during this time, and telling them how to escape less scarred, and ensure that they don't have too many taxes, and try and become efficient with it. Exactly. But I actually wanted to test your knowledge of the videos that you have put out as we wrap this up. You had one of the very first videos that you put out was the 4 ratios for saving, and I got you on because I really
wow, it's not even tax related. It was one of my test videos. Let me just make a YouTube video and see what happens.
Well, I actually think the advice of that video was pertinent, like really, really good stuff, because for a South African that is starting their savings journey and getting their first salary and thinking, geez, how must I budget this? Do you remember your 4 ratios?
As far as I know, it's the lifestyle ratio, your living expenses. Mm-hmm. It's your savings ratio. it's your benevolence or your giving ratio. My word, I can't remember the fourth one.
Must have been the fun and the surplus ratio. That's the one that you.
Oh yes.
That's the one that you use for Dogecoin investments. I'm surprised you forgot.
Yeah, fun. The fun money one. Yeah,
I really enjoyed
the four
that.
financial ratios.
Yeah. So if South Africans apply that, I mean, is that a good starting point to get your investment and budgeting journey going?
I do think so. Because when you hear the word budget, you can draw equals as boring. That's what people, I think, go to when they hear the word budget. And so the four financial ratios, I think it's helpful when you think about, there's actually four things you can do with your money. Number one, you need to live on it, and some of it. Number two, the ratios tell you that you must at least save some of your money, invest some of your money. Number three, you can't just live and not have fun. So at least have fun with your money from time to time. And treat yourself for the hard work that you've done throughout the week. Or get an ice cream, or get yourself a cool game, or watch a live live sport, or that's no longer possible. But you do the things that's fun for you. And the fourth one, actually changed my financial ways when I got married, is the benevolence one. Is how important if you give, because you feel so good when you decide to give to to an organization that you feel that's important to you, or there's somebody, a friend or a family member who's in financial need. When you make an allocation for that in your budget, and you do that, you make a difference in the world, and it's coming, and that difference, it's hurting you a little bit because it's coming from your pocket, but that recipient will be, the world will thank you so much for the fact that you've given them something. So, if South Africans try it, you just test it out. Write out your salary that you have. Draw some ratios. Maybe say 70% on lifestyle. Maybe 10% on saving and investing. Another percent, maybe another 10% for. And you see, can you budget according to the ratios that you've set for yourself, without strictly allocating the numbers. And I think people might be better off if they try out those ratios, just to test them out. Try it out for a month and see how it goes.
Yeah, no, look, I've started saying that we need to change the way we gift things to people, and that's what I've liked in the last year or so, is to take a look at, can you give somebody a voucher, right, that they can use on an investment platform? And that's becoming a reality now, So even in that kind of way, you can start teaching somebody, listen, this is how you invest. This is how you make your money grow to a degree. And I think that's what South Africans need. They need a little nudge, because there's considerable nervousness in the South African public. Because remember, the South Africans feel like, I don't want a fly-by-night thing that's going to take my money. I want something that is definitely going to be
schemes.
That's it. That's the thing. And we've just seen MTI in this country. I mean, my dad had a person who came to them who was actually invested in MTI. I mean, the tax consultants are seeing that in South Africa. It's actually real. It's not just the media story. So what is your advice to the beginner investor in South Africa who's got their money, they've got a little bit of the money stashed, and they're like, listen, okay, I want to take that first step. What was your first step, and what was your first investment, if you can remember that far back?
Let me just quickly switch on the light.
No, yeah, I mean Cape Town. Well, I mean the funny part is I've had a light on the whole time. The sun is still pretty much up there by
you. The first investment, I think my first investment was with Coronation. I started a basic 1,000 Rand a month in there, and I actually cashed out that investment in order to buy my wife an engagement ring.
Boss.
So that was the first move. and now it's on. I'm investing the education fund on easy equities. For now, we are pausing extra investments because my wife is looking for a job. So we're currently sitting on a bit of emergency funds and just holding on to cash at the moment because when there's financial pressures, you actually want more liquidity. Otherwise, you need to sell the stuff in order to survive. So. But yeah, I think my move after this is maybe plugging in 500 Rand a month into Dogecoin just for fun, just something that I'm doing. And then for family investing, but for proper investing, I would probably max out the tax-free savings that we've got. And after that, I might consider maybe specific single stock investing. But one thing I'm particularly fond of is if you have your own business, like I want to build my YouTube platform and make it bigger, make it better, potentially turn it into a business. And so one thing outside of your normal investing that you could do for somebody who's starting out, I think easy equities, the fact that you can invest with 5 Rand is amazing. So that's what I would tell the viewers. But for myself is if I've got extra cash lying around and I've sorted out the tax-free savings, I would actually invest some cash inside a friend's business or my own, and then grab a share of that business, especially if I like the business idea. Because the thing is, if the friend is a good friend, and what that means is you can trust them, they've got your back, then then if they start a business, maybe it doesn't work out, you can grab your capital later. You might not have a capital loss, but you could maybe be that investor your friend needs, or that you might need if your business needs the capital. So yeah, that's what I would say.
No, yeah, I like that a lot. Covering yourself with friends that also are in this investment mindset actually makes you a better investor long term as well. But not if you are saying buy Dogecoin and that's the only thing you buy. Andre
Exactly.
Bothma,
spread out.
Yeah, the king of Dogecoin here on the Quintessential Show tonight. It was Andre Bothma. Listen, on Twitter you are at Andre Bothma Tax, correct?
100%, yes.
There we go. Please
Bit
go.
of a nail in the coffin. I'm known for tax.
You're known for tax. No, listen. You're known for getting people out of the tax pinches because the state wants to come and follow us and get every cent they can. But listen, keep doing what you're doing. I love the YouTube channel. You're getting a nice little following going for yourself. Keep on making those tax videos. I benefit from them. I'm sure there are many people on social media that do as well. So thank you for doing what you are doing. Andre's channel link is in the description, but sincerely go and follow him on Twitter as well. Andre, thank you so much for joining Quintessential Show today.
Thank you so much, Quintus, for having me. This was a pleasure.
Next time there's a SARS crisis, you're back on the show. So
sounds good.
Yeah,
all
good
right,
luck.
Thanks,
good
man.
luck with the future of whatever is next in the frustration column of tax in South Africa. All right, Andre.
Thank you.
Cheerio, bud.
All right, cheers, man.